Hello there. Good morning and welcome. This is Keith from the Keith Speaking Academy. Nice to see you here. It's lovely and rainy over here in Santander in Spain. Today we've got a super exciting lesson for you. It's all about a very, very special theme that I never ever talk about. IELTS writing. Something totally new, something exciting. I think you'll enjoy it. We've got a special guest. We'll be looking at tips, strategies and ideas to help you with your IELTS writing. To begin though, let's have a look at some of this. Hello there, nice to see you, my friends. How are you? Welcome. It's really good to see you here. This is, if you don't know, my name's Keith, and I, as well as the YouTube channel English Speaking Success, I run the website The Keith Speaking Academy. Where is that, I hear you ask? Well, let me show you. It's over here. KeithSpeakingAcademy.com. You can find out lots of information about the IELTS speaking test, all different parts of the test. There's lots of free resources, PDFs, live lessons you can access, as well as you can get access to my online course. If you're interested in going much deeper and having a nice structured course, I've got a course called IELTS Speaking Success, Get a Band 7+. You can find out all about it on the website. In fact, if I even just show you the website, I can show you exactly where it is. This is ever so clever, this technology. Look, here's the website. And if you just go on the first page, you can actually there download my ebook, Avoid the 10 Most Common Mistakes. That's absolutely free. You can download it here. And if you just press study with me, that'll take you to the course. You can go directly, find out all about the course. If it's right for you, if it's what you're looking for, then you can buy it straight away there on the website. It's the KeithSpeakingAcademy.com. Enough advertisements. Well, one more advertisement for YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please do remember, do subscribe. Turn on that notification button so that you can find out about upcoming videos coming this way. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, hello as well. Talking of hellos, let me leap out and just see who's in the house today. Desiree, hello, nice to see you. Duan Li, great to see you. Gia or Gia Sung, nice to see you. Ashi, I missed you too. Facebook users, unfortunately, we don't get your name normally. Irene Okpisa, hello, nice to see you here. Budia Panda, lovely to see you as well, great. Lots of people from all over around the world. Now, today we also have somebody from all around the world, from a different part of the world, who is joining us today, and it's our very, very special guest. And I've asked him to join us, well, for several reasons, because we're talking about IELTS writing. Now, I never teach IELTS writing. I've decided just to focus on the speaking, but so many students have been asking for help with IELTS writing. So I am collaborating now with this person. His name is Eli, and we are collaborating together to bring you lots of help and support with your IELTS writing. That includes 2 live lessons today and next Monday. And then next week, we're going to launch, it's a course, an IELTS writing course. Before I tell you more about that, let's introduce our very, very special guest. And this is, hopefully this works, we can bring him in. Eli, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much, Keith. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to be here today.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. So you said it's raining in Spain. It's actually snowing in Dublin today.
You're in Dublin, Ireland.
That's right. Yep.
So it
Yeah.
must be freezing. What, 0 degrees?
I haven't checked the temperature, but it certainly looks pretty cold outside. To be honest, it's quite toasty in the flat. But
Right.
yeah, very cold outside.
Now, some of the students know you because you're quite active on our Facebook group. But tell us a bit more about you and who you are and what you do.
Right. So I guess we've actually had quite a kind of similar background. We've both been based in Edinburgh in Scotland,
Mhm.
both based in Spain. I was in Barcelona, I think you were in Santander. And
Yeah.
then we were both in China for a while as well. And we've both got a background in IELTS and specializing in IELTS teaching. Now, you've gone down the speaking route, and
Mhm.
I've gone down the writing route a bit further. So we're
Yeah.
quite complementary in that sense. I run a website, EnglishProTips.com, a YouTube channel, English Pro Tips, IELTS preparation, and an active Facebook group as well, where we look at different activities to do with IELTS and especially IELTS writing.
Fantastic. And I've just seen that the moderators are sharing the link to your YouTube channel. Guys, go and check out Eli's YouTube channel. There's some great stuff there for not only IELTS writing, but kind of vocabulary and other things as well. It's really some good quality videos to check out. Now, Eli and myself have known each other for maybe more than a year, 2 years, maybe. It's been quite a while
Around two
since,
years.
yeah, since we first met online. Um, and we've always been in touch with each other. We love bouncing ideas off each other about IELTS, but also about technology and online learning and how online learning really works. And so we have decided to collaborate on doing this live lesson, but also on bringing you Eli's writing course for IELTS through the Keith Speaking Academy. So we're going to offer this course on the Keith Speaking Academy on the Teachable platform, the same platform where I have my speaking course. From next week, you'll be able also to buy Eli's writing course. It's an amazing course, and this is why we're collaborating together to bring you really great quality courses. Um, and maybe Eli, you could tell us a little bit more about the course.
Yeah, I'm really excited to bring the writing course to your Teachable platform. I think it'll bring a lot of convenience
Mm.
to your students and the people who are interested in your speaking course. And the way it's going to work is we're going to be going through everything to do with IELTS writing. So we're looking at both the academic and general IELTS. So it doesn't matter which one you're doing, you can do this course. And we first of all look at task two and everything to do with task two. So we look at the different question types, we look at different essay structures, we look at linking words and other skills like hedging, for example, which is a very useful skill for task two. And then we look at academic task one and general task one as well. So you can skip to the part that's more relevant to you. And largely based on the conversations that we've had together, Keith, the way that the lessons are organized is that we have a video lesson, and then below that you have a downloadable PDF which summarizes the lesson and maybe has a couple of extra activities to do with the lesson topic. And then below that, you're going to have a quiz as well, which really tests your understanding of the lesson. And this has largely come out of conversations that we've had over kind of student retention and really maximizing the benefits of our lessons for the people who want to get high scores in the IELTS writing and speaking test.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a key thing about discussing together how online learning works best and how to give the best value for students so they can learn. So that has been a great collaboration. I mean, to be very, very clear, the course is Eli's course. He is the teacher in the course, not me. But we have talked about how we develop courses and this course in particular. So great. I was just sharing a few comments to distract you, Eli. People who are saying hello, and the collaboration hopefully will be well received, and people will enjoy the lessons we're doing today and Monday, and also the course for those who want to buy the course. Um, Great. So today we are focused on IELTS writing, today's live lesson. And also next Monday, we will also have another live lesson. So just to let you know, that will come up on Monday. That's the 28th of February, the last day of February at 4 p.m. in Spain time. We'll be doing about writing a high scoring essay, which you don't want to miss. So that will be interesting. Today, what we're going to do, well, let me just tell you what we're going to do today. IELTS writing, of course, that's crystal clear, right? We're going to be talking about, well, first of all, generating ideas in the exam. So I put out a post on Facebook and on YouTube about the challenges you find for IELTS writing. One of the overwhelming responses was how to get ideas, how to generate ideas. It's tough, right? So this is something we want to look at today, give you some ideas, no pun intended, to help you. We'll be looking at good study habits. Essential, right? People can spend months and months and months studying the wrong way and they don't get the results they need. So good study habits, we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at some fun idioms. Fun idioms, right? Here, what is that, right? Dog, shout, up, cross tree. What idiom is that? How bizarre. Very, very strange. But listen, we'll have a bit of fun with idioms today as well. Tips for time management. We'll be looking at how you can control your time when you're doing IELTS writing and how to practice for that. And generally overall. And then we'll finish up. Well, there's a PDF. So all the notes that we take today, and there is a special PDF with a kind of a summary of the key points that we've got. You'll be able to download that at the end of the class. We'll give you the link. We'll let you know all about that. Okay, brilliant. So that's where we are today. How does that sound, Eli?
Sounds brilliant. Yeah, I'm especially looking forward to the idiom quiz in the middle.
The idiom quiz will get everybody's racking their brains and trying to work out what it really means, right?
I think I know the answer to the one that you just showed. I think I've got the answer for that one, but we'll see. We'll see later on. Yeah, I'll keep it stumm.
Don't tell anybody. Some people are already putting the answers in the chat box. Great, good. So we're going to start up. Let's have a look. Well, we're going to start, I think, over here. I'm going to basically hand over to Eli. And Eli, we can start beginning with, IELTS writing. I'm going to hand over to you.
Sure thing. Yeah, so this is largely from Keith's Facebook post where he asked people what they struggle with most about IELTS writing. And there were two kind of overwhelming ideas that kept on popping up. So the first one was generating ideas, which is that scary moment when you go to do your IELTS test, you look at the question and you go, I don't know what I'm going to write about. I can't think of any ideas or any examples even for this particular essay topic. So we're going to be looking at how to generate ideas, and specifically we're going to be looking at what you can do when you're writing your essay, and then also what you can do in your preparation time to develop good habits to maximize your chances of coming up with relevant ideas for the essay question that you get in the test. And then after that, we're also going to be looking at 5 tips for managing your time in IELTS essay writing. But yeah, let's start with generating ideas. And specifically, we're going to start with what you do when you're writing your essay. Now, I like an approach called the multiple perspectives approach, and we'll see what that is. You take your question, so we've got one here in blue. All high school children should have to wear a school uniform. Do you agree or disagree? So this is a very typical IELTS style question. And what you would do in the multiple perspectives approach is you would think about who are the people affected by this. or what kind of different perspectives can we come up with? So could we come up with an environmental perspective or an economic perspective? But in this case, let's go with who is affected. So step one, who is affected? So, well, for example, the school children that have to wear a school uniform are certainly affected by this situation. Keith, maybe you come up with some ideas of who else might be affected by having school children having to wear a school uniform.
Gosh, well, students, yeah, as you mentioned. I guess who else? Maybe, I guess as a teacher, I mean, I've taught students in schools and with uniforms and without. And as a teacher, I think it also affects them. They're an affected party, I would say.
Totally. Yeah. So the teachers, and then maybe even the parents of the students as well. I don't know, Keith, did you ever wear a school uniform yourself when you were growing up?
um, that's a very, very funny you should ask that because I did. I went to what in England is called a grammar school, right? And in the primary school, we had the full Monty. We had the cap, the blazer, the tie, the trousers, the whole uniform, and even these little short trousers. And in winter, it was bitter cold, and yeah, we had to wear short trousers as part of the uniform. When we went to the secondary school, we were allowed long trousers. It was like we were joining the big boys. It's quite interesting. Yeah,
I can imagine that must have been horrible in the winter.
it was. Yeah, it was painfully cold. But I think the attitude was young children can just survive everything.
That's kind of true.
Yeah. What about you? Did you wear a uniform?
No, I didn't actually. I went to a school with quite a liberal dress code, so we
Right.
were able to wear whatever we wanted, really, within reason. But my sisters, they both went to schools where you wear a school uniform. So every morning, I remember I would be getting dressed in whatever I wanted to wear, usually various T-shirts of various music bands that I liked, and
Mm,
my sisters were putting on their school uniforms to get ready for school. I was
right.
always actually slightly jealous of them. There's something quite cool, I think, about it's almost like being in a team, a football team or a rugby team, the way that everybody's got their school uniform. But I
Very
think
true.
they were more jealous of me than I was of them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the sense of identity is certainly something that comes out with a uniform for good or for bad. If you like the school, it's good. If you hate your school, it's bad.
Mm. Well, actually, and so that kind of moves us back on to step two, which would be when we try to empathize with these groups. So
Right.
I liked what you said there. You said the sense of identity that people have with clothing. So I guess that's one point that we can mention in step two is that students, when they have to wear a school uniform, sometimes they lose that sense of identity because they can't use their clothing to express their identity. And I was wondering, maybe we can move to the audience and think of some other ways that, or some other ideas for how students might feel if they're forced to wear a school uniform. So whether they might feel positively or negatively, and what they will be feeling.
Yeah.
So maybe we can move to the audience and get some ideas.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Great. So I've just put in the phrases there that we've been using for people to know. So guys in the chat box, yeah, if you want to put in your ideas there about how the students, if we're talking about students, how they might feel
yes.
about it. Um, yes, and we'll just wait for a few seconds for that to come up. I've just added the. I noticed you said a liberal dress code. I thought that was a nice expression. A liberal dress code, as in being very um, open and free about the dress code. So as we go along, I'll kind of add little phrases that might be useful for students as we come up as well. So I'll just put up some comments that have come up. We've got Vi Tao says a sense of belonging. Right, great. Mayrin says sense of belonging to a community. Right, that's interesting. Yes. Um, class equilibrium from Prakash. And I
Mm.
think you mean the kind of the equality between different classes, maybe. Emma says, where's Emma? You've gone. Well, we've got Ahmed, who says, you will be amazed that children are enthusiastic to wear their uniforms. Right. Interesting. Thanks, Ahmed. That's great. Daniela says, a liberal dress code. Good student. Does the student feel better? Dimaj, I think the creativity features of students may be curbed. That's interesting, right? To curb means to reduce the creativity. So maybe I should put up some of these ideas, right?
Yeah, if you could write some of these down, Keith, that would be great because maybe we can look at them in a bit more detail later.
Yeah. So I'll just put up a few of these as we're going. We talked about class equality. Ismail says they feel extensive discipline. So I will try and type. I'm a terrible typer.
Yeah, and I really like that idea about a sense of belonging to a community. If you can write that one up as well, Keith.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's put these up. This is nice from Mohammed. Maintains uniformity, which is kind of the class equality idea. And that's great because the pun is quite clever. Uniformity. If you think about where the word uniform comes from, everything is the same. It makes everybody uniform. Very good. Duong says, being a student, I wish I don't have to wear a school uniform as it makes me feel horrible. Oh dear. Sorry about that, Hong.
Interesting. It'd be interesting to know why wearing a school uniform makes him feel horrible.
Yeah.
Whether it's the lack of identity or whether it's literally the physical feeling of having to wear an uncomfortable school uniform makes him feel horrible.
Duong,
Because that's the other thing
answer.
about school uniforms. Often they're made of durable but very uncomfortable material. At least in the UK, that's true. Maybe in other countries, school uniforms are very comfortable.
Very good. I'm going to add that one as well. Duong, get back to us. Let us know. The question is out there. Hassan says they feel equal. The idea of equality. Great. And Rohit has that idea as well. The uniform brings that sense of unity and equality. Right. Sense of unity. That's interesting. That sense of belonging, but also unity. That they're kind of all in the same boat, right? In it together.
Yeah, you definitely want to put those kind of ideas together because there's definitely some overlap there between a sense of belonging and a sense of unity.
Yeah.
They're absolutely great ideas.
They're great. So we're actually putting them together. Zia says no discrimination. Similar idea, right? About sense of belonging. Discipline comes up. Dharmesh also mentions discipline. Inculcate discipline. Nice word, inculcate, especially for writing. Myrain brings up an interesting one. It's way affordable for parents.
Right. So let's hold that idea for a second because right now we've been talking about the students, but that's exactly right. The next thing we'll do is look at the next group. And so we mentioned teachers and parents as well as other groups that are affected. So maybe now we can move on to, well, why don't we move on to parents first, just because we've got the first idea down, that it's less expensive. So maybe as a group now all together, we can think of some ideas about how parents would feel about their children having to wear a school uniform. So certainly some might feel happy about it because it's more affordable. How else might they feel?
I'm multitasking here.
No, you're doing very well, Keith. I'm impressed.
It's so much fun. It's great. So, guys, in the comments, we're looking at parents. What might the parents feel? Any ideas? Those of you who are parents, you should have an opinion here. Let's see.
Maybe I can get the ball rolling. So one thing that I remember when I was growing up is that it would take me a lot longer to get ready for school because I had to choose what to wear, whereas my sisters who had their school uniform, they knew exactly what they were wearing that day, so it was very quick for them to get ready. And my parents loved that. They loved that their daughters took about 3 minutes to get ready for school, and it took me about 20 minutes to choose what to wear.
Yeah, nice. Jingjing says sense of ease on clothes. I'm guessing if that might refer to comfortableness. I'm not sure. What do you think, Eli?
Yeah, I think the sense of ease on clothes probably relating to comfort and probably more to do with students' perspective rather than the parents' perspective.
Right. Now look at the next two comments. This is interesting. Emma says for parents, it's always affordable, right? Yours says some parents can't afford to buy uniforms. And I totally get that. I think it works both ways because in one of the schools that we took our daughter to, the price of the uniform was astronomical, and because I think there was only one shop that sold that uniform, and so they had very high prices. And I remember thinking it would be cheaper, just t-shirts and jeans. So I think there's both sides of the equation. That it could be affordable for some parents, but actually too expensive.
Yeah, and certainly that's the kind of thing that you can mention in your IELTS essay to show the development of your idea. So something that examiners and teachers will be looking for those high-level essays is, can you take your idea and can you develop upon it? And that kind of debate within that idea is a great way to develop your idea further. So you can say that, well, student uniforms aren't necessarily always more affordable because in some cases, schools make use of a monopolistic power to keep their prices artificially high, and parents end up forking out more money for their children's clothing.
Wow, I'm trying to get you had some great expressions there. Makes use of a monopolistic power. Schools make use of a monopolistic power. Great.
I don't want to be quoted on that.
um, I can't remember what else you said there, but never mind. That was good. Something about
I think I
forking
also
out.
mentioned that, yeah, exactly. Sometimes parents will have to fork out a lot more money for their children's school uniform than what they would necessarily pay if they were going to high street shops, but not always.
Yeah. Fork out. That's interesting. Is that a phrasal verb you would use in writing as well as speaking?
Yeah, certainly.
Right. Great. Because that's a common question, actually. A lot of students ask me when I'm doing writing, they ask me, oh, that idiom, that phrasal verb, can I use it in writing as well? It's very hard to say. I mean, there's no black and white about it. With idioms, I think you have to be quite careful in writing. Not all of them that you can. Phrasal verbs, a lot more are used in writing as well as speaking.
Yeah,
What do you
it's
think?
a real tricky one. I guess it really depends on the formality of the phrasal verb or the idiom. So there's certainly phrasal verbs that you'd even find more regularly in writing. So, for
Right.
example, something like
Yeah.
carry out research.
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, that's a phrasal verb, and you do see it more often in writing than in speaking.
Yeah.
In general, there tends to be fewer phrasal verbs and idioms in writing, but they do appear, and usually there's writing specific idioms or phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
Things
Great.
like carry out. Again, that's the kind of thing that I look at in a bit more detail in the writing course that will be on your platform on Wednesday.
So look out for that coming next week. The writing course coming next week. Great.
So shall we move on to the next group,
Let's
which I
move
think was the
on.
final group were the teachers?
Yes. Yeah. How will it affect teachers? There's just a very quick one here that we missed out, but it's a good one. I don't have to worry every morning about what my children should wear. Yeah, nice. Great. Amani, thank you for that. Let's look at teachers then. What are some of the ideas about how teachers may feel about uniforms?
Keith, I know a lot of your viewers are also teachers themselves, so hopefully there's going to be some interesting perspectives here.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. There are a number of teachers actually in the group, and with lots of very, very good and interesting ideas. So I'd like to see, yeah, what they think about that with their students. If they wear a uniform, how they feel, and if they don't, how do they feel about it?
Mm.
Right, we've got a few ideas still. Okay, let me change and come back in. Guarav says teacher said uniform is mandatory. That's true. The teacher and the school may make it mandatory. That's a nice word, Guarav. Mandatory, meaning obligatory. Yeah. Now, Damesh Luhana says teachers can effortlessly focus on lectures if all are in the same uniform. Interesting. So maybe that means teachers are not distracted by all the different clothes, maybe.
Well, and it also means that they don't have to necessarily debate with the students when they come in over whether their clothing that day falls within or falls outside of the dress code in that school. Because even if a school doesn't have a uniform, usually they've got a dress code. And sometimes some of the students take liberties and try to move outside of that dress code. So I think Damesh is completely right. If there's a school uniform, then they don't have to have that debate with students about whether their clothing is within the dress code, and that allows them to focus on the lesson as well.
Fantastic. Great. I love that collocation, falling within the dress code or falling out of the dress code. Very nice. Yeah. Rohit says teachers can distinguish students easily based on the uniform. I would have thought the opposite, but that's interesting.
Maybe between schools, that is.
Right, so maybe we could put something there. Cannot judge students by their clothes. That makes sense to me. I guess the idea that you're not going to discriminate or treat students differently because they're wearing certain clothes. I mean, even subconsciously, you might be influenced by a person's appearance, right?
Yeah, completely.
Especially,
I hadn't thought of that in the slightest, but certainly that's true. We have all sorts of kind of unconscious bias when it comes to different clothing, and you don't really want students to treat each other differently because of the clothing that they wear, but you certainly don't want teachers treating children or students differently depending on the clothing that they wear.
And I know
So that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's particularly true, and I've seen this in schools where you have richer students and poorer students. And the richer students, the quality of their clothes, the Nike shoes, the Adidas top, and then poorer students may not have that. You can be influenced by the quality of the clothes. If they're all wearing the same uniform, then it makes it easier. I guess the idea that the teacher won't discriminate students in that sense.
Exactly. Okay, Keith, should we stay on this for a little bit longer or shall we move on?
I think we should move on. Just given the time, we've got some nice ideas here and lots of ideas coming through from everybody. Fantastic. Really good. But we will move on just because we're aware of the time. So what's next, Eli?
Okay, so let's continue with the kind of the three-step process of the multiple perspective approach. So the first step was to identify which groups are affected. So we did that. We looked at the students, the teachers, the parents. And depending on the question, we might also want to look at a slightly different perspective. For example, often in IELTS, you might want to come up with an environmental perspective or an economic perspective or a governmental perspective over a particular question. So that was step one. Step two is to empathize with these different groups and perspectives and to come up with ideas based on your understanding of how they might feel. And we did that. Now, step three is to choose which of those ideas to mention in your essay. And that's going to largely come down to a few different factors. The first one is depending on the essay structure you're going to choose, you're going to need a certain quantity of ideas. So most essay structures will have between 2 to 4 ideas. And actually, a lot of the time, what I'll find is students that get high level or write high level essays and get high scores in the IELTS writing tests don't necessarily have more ideas or better ideas, but they're able to develop their ideas further. And students that get lower scores tend to write lots of ideas, but they don't develop those ideas. So ultimately, what you want to do is to choose 2 to 4 ideas, again, based on the essay structure that you choose, and then you want to make sure that you develop those. We're also going to look at that in a second. Now, as for the essay structure you choose, that's something that we're going to look at in a bit more detail on Monday's lesson. So we're not going to look at that today, but certainly on Monday we will. And then the next thing we're going to think about is, well, which of these ideas, the ideas that we've thought of, are the easiest for us to write about and for us to communicate? Because remember, in IELTS, you're not really assessed on the complexity of your ideas or the brilliant ideas that you've thought of. You're assessed on your ability to communicate and develop those ideas. So most of the time, you'll actually want to go with the most obvious ideas that you feel confident to communicate and to expand upon. Now, when it comes to expanding and developing upon those ideas, often the best way is to try and come up with an example for the ideas that you mention in your essay. So I was thinking maybe we can look at some ideas and to try and come up with examples for those ideas. So Keith, maybe if you could show us some of the ideas from the student perspective, then let's see if we can come up with an example for some of these ideas.
Sure. I'm the invisible, I was going to say secretary, not secretary, note taker. Let's go back. I'm just going back to the students. So some of the students' ideas we may want to talk about. I'll say a few, and you can choose one you want to take forward. Curbs their creativity. Talked about equality or uniformity, sense of belonging, uncomfortable, sense of belonging.
Well, why don't we go with the first idea that it curbs your creativity and your sense of identity if you have a school uniform. So maybe as a group again, maybe we can think of some examples of that. And one thing I'd like to mention about examples in IELTS essays is they don't have to be complex facts and figures from research. They're actually going to be your observations about society. So you wouldn't necessarily mention your personal experience. So you wouldn't say, I had to wear a school uniform and this is how I felt. But you would frame that in your observation about society. So you can say many teenagers that wear school uniforms will find that as an example. So maybe we can come up with an example together about students feeling that their sense of identity is lost as a result of wearing school uniforms. Can we open that up to the chat?
We can indeed. Yes, I'm just going to throw that on just for everybody. So we're looking at the ideas and examples here. The idea, it curbs, which means reduces their creativity. And just highlighting what Eli said about taking your personal example and extending it to society. It's a great tip. So, guys, any examples you can think of about it curbs their creativity? Some Angelica. Nice one, Angelica.
Angelica.
Karishma, we're talking about IELTS writing and we're looking at the topic of uniforms in school. So we'll just take a minute. While we're waiting just for a second, I'm going to put on some nice relaxing music. Yan Wei Dong. 谢谢, 谢谢. That's very kind. I don't know if you can see that. Nice to see you here, Yan Wei Dong. Right, we're waiting for a moment. It curbs their creativity. Examples.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could brainstorm some examples together as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm racking my brains. How does it curb their creativity? Because they're wearing a uniform.
Yeah, it would curb creativity and also sense of identity. So, I mean, like, for example, I certainly felt that I could express certain ideas and beliefs through the clothing that I wore. So, for example, the t-shirts that you wear that maybe show off a particular music taste, that's a sense of identity that's lost.
Right. So a particular t-shirt, you may have t-shirts where you like heavy metal music and that's your sense of identity, being a heavy metal rocker or a heavy metal person.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good idea. Yeah, I guess also with I'm thinking of shoes. I mean, a lot of people whose identity is around sport. You know, at school we always had the sports people. We had the very lazy people, but they're always the best sports people. They were always good at sport, and very often, not in my school because we had a uniform, but they may express that with they wear Nike Air Push shoes or whatever is fashionable at the moment. Right. This is challenging because we've got a few comments, but nothing directly related to this. Okay, right. let's. Well, I'll just share one or two that have come up, but it's a really difficult one. Oh, the comments have gone. There was one that was just there. Where is it? Come back. Prince William, Prince William. Thank you for joining us, Your Highness. Says that uniform will restrict the students from exploring other traditional clothing. Interesting. Samira says...
so that could certainly be used as an example.
Yes. Prints on t-shirts, is that what you were talking about the t-shirt representing your particular, maybe your favorite colors or music?
Yeah, certainly. And the way that you express that as well is you would want to elaborate slightly on why prints on t-shirts are an example of being able to express your identity. So you'd want to say something along the lines of, for example, some students choose particular prints on t-shirts that express a music choice or a political belief or an idea about the world, for example. So it's often about how you frame your idea and your example.
Sorry, I'm typing quite slowly and badly. For example, certain t-shirts may represent their taste in music.
Or ideas about the world as well.
Yeah. For example, I remember at university it was very, very common for students to wear T-shirts with the CND, the peace symbol, representing them as being an activist or fighting against nuclear weapons and fighting for peace.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe actually just maybe we can kind of look at one more idea and come up with an example together, Keith, and then we
Yeah.
can just continue with the lesson,
Yeah.
just because there's a few more things that we need to get through.
Yeah.
So,
Indeed.
from a parent's perspective, we were talking about how um, uniforms can be either more affordable or less affordable. And certainly that's the kind of thing that you could mention as an example. You can talk about the price of school uniforms in your country relative to uh, high street brands. So you could say, for example, school uniforms in my country are subsidized by the school or the government, whereas high street brands will often include a rather large markup on their clothing, which makes them less affordable for poorer parents. So that's the kind of thing that you can definitely use as an example to develop your idea.
Yeah. So if the idea is it's affordable or it's too expensive, developing that uniforms are subsidized by the government, but high street brands may have a high markup and be more
Mhm.
expensive, right?
That's right. And so certainly, so we've basically got two ideas there that we know that we can fully develop. And so we would, if we want to have between two or four ideas, then these two ideas would certainly be the ones that we would choose in our essay. And again, on in Monday, we'll be writing high-level essays together, and we'll be exploring that concept a little bit further. But let's move on now, if you don't mind, Keith, and we'll
Sure.
talk a bit about developing some good habits in your preparation time before you go to do your IELTS test. So basically, there's kind of five steps that will help you to write better essays and to be able to develop your critical thinking skills, which will help you to get um, better and quicker ideas in your IELTS test. So, step one would be to choose an IELTS essay from a reliable source. So, for example, from the Cambridge Past Papers books, or I have some IELTS essays on my website, and in the PDF, the downloadable PDF from this lesson, we look at some sources of good IELTS essays. Step two would be to plan your essay. So, certainly in your preparation time, don't worry about time constraints. Give yourself enough time to really plan your essay and think about which points you're going to mention. Use the multiple perspectives approach, and give yourself a lot of time to explore the topic. Now, step three would be to research the topic. So, simply by using a search engine like Google and typing in the question, you're going to get a lot of good resources that will allow you to come up with more ideas. So, even the way that, for example, today, when we were brainstorming as a group, we came up with so many more ideas than I think any one individual would have come up with by themselves. Use either other students as a resource or Google and other search engines as a resource to research the topic. Now, I've got one website that I really like um, that has a lot of information on typical IELTS topics, and that's procon.org. And Keith, I was wondering whether you would be able to show everybody that website, and maybe I'll talk them through why I think it's a very good website for researching topics.
Absolutely. Yes, I remember this website. We talked about it. It's a very, very good one. I'm just looking for it now. Just give me a moment. Everything
Sure
has
thing.
suddenly slowed down, and I'm not sure why. So just hang on a moment. Procon. It's a great website. It's loading up. I'll put it on the screen, and you can just talk through it.
Sure. And I'll give people a brief idea of what it's like. Okay, here we have it. So basically, I love this website because it looks at a lot of topics that might appear in IELTS. And it will, so for example, some of the topics that are mentioned are things like artificial intelligence, private prisons, space colonization, pit bull bans. So pit bulls being the dogs that may or may not be dangerous. Um, Other topics around education on the right hand side, what we have here: school uniforms, homework, animal dissection. So these are the kind of topics that may well appear in IELTS. And the reason these are topics that may well appear in IELTS is because they're not necessarily controversial topics. So they're not topics that are likely to offend people, but they are topics that have typical pros and cons. And so what you can do is you can click into these topics, like should students have to wear school uniforms? And if you scroll down, Keith, you'll find there's a list of pros on one side, so all the reasons why people should wear a school uniform, and then cons on the other side. So all the reasons why people should not wear a school uniform. And what you can do is you can look at the headings and see which ideas you agree with, which ideas you thought of already, and which ideas are new to you. And if you look below those headings, you just get a little bit more information about those particular cons or pros or cons. So that's a great website to just explore a little bit. And by exploring the ideas in those websites, you're going to be getting more ideas that will be relevant to your IELTS writing.
Nice. That's brilliant. It was a bit slow loading, but it's well worth having a look at. The moderators have shared the link. We will also put the link in the notes at the end. There was another website, but given the time, I think we'll skip over it. And I think we'll move on, Eli. Otherwise, we will get lost. So where were we? You were talking about researching the topic, right?
Yeah. Step 3 was researching your topic. Step 4 would be just writing your essay. Important to actually write your essay and not just skip over that, which a lot of people do in their preparation. And then step 5 is to compare your essay with either model essays or with friends' essays or other students' essays. So for example, my website, I have lots of model band 8, band 9 essays on a range of different topics. And what I've found is students that typically, or some students that do very well in the exam, what they do is they write their own essays and then they compare them to the model essays, and then they see, well, which ideas overlap and how have I communicated that idea, and how has the model essay communicated that idea. And that kind of analysis will really help you in your preparation for the IELTS test. Now, Keith, before we move on to the next part, which is managing your time in IELTS, I was thinking maybe we could play that idioms game.
Aha! I love the idioms game. Absolutely, we can. So yeah, very, 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 very good idea. I was just going to do a very, very quick recap for people who are joining us and maybe coming in late. We are looking at IELTS writing today. That's our focus with myself and Eli. We've looked at, so far, generating ideas in the exam and the importance of the quality of the idea, not the number of the ideas, and how it depends on the structure of the essay as well. We've looked a little bit about study habits there, 5 things you can do to make sure you're studying in a better way. Fun idioms, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to have a little break with some fun idioms. This is quite interesting. We're going to take some pictures and put them on the screen, and then I want you to guess, put the comment in the comments to guess what the idiom is, right? So I'll put both of us on. There's me and Eli, but I'm going to take our names off so we can have room. Da-da-da-da. And let's see if I can put the first one on. Eli, you can talk as well, whatever comes into your head, to see if you can get this. Here's the first one. What is the idiom?
Okay, I think I've got this one. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I think I've got this one. So we've got dog speak up no tree. So I think
Dog
the
speak.
final I think the final emoji is a good clue, as is the first one.
Yeah, dog
Something
and
about
tree.
dogs and trees.
John says, I like fun idioms too much. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to put it in the center. Right, we've got something very close. Lash says, dog barks at wrong tree. Ooh, instead of at, look at the
Pretty
arrow.
close.
Yenwei,
But
great
they've
to
got
see
the
you.
right idea with barks,
Don't
so
bark
it's not.
on the wrong tree. We've got Ramatova says dogs bark at the wrong tree. I'll tell you what, somebody got it at the very, very beginning, and it was a V. Dog barking up the wrong tree. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, the expression, the idiom is, Eli, what would the idiom be?
Yeah, so you'd say to someone, "Hey, you're barking up the wrong tree," which is
Exactly.
if
You
they've got a misled idea, or that maybe they're accusing you of something that you didn't do, and they've got the wrong idea about it. So you say, "Hey, you're barking up the wrong tree." Is that how you would use it, Keith?
That is exactly how I would use it. Yeah. So rather than saying dog, you don't say dog. That's not part of the idiom. It's just you are barking up the wrong tree, or he is barking up the wrong tree. He's got the wrong idea, or he's misunderstood something. I'm just going to add that into, if I just take that off. So you are barking up. So remember, up the wrong tree.
Yeah. Probably worth mentioning, it's probably one of these idioms, a bit like "it's raining cats and dogs," that a lot of people know, but they don't necessarily use it so regularly in everyday conversation. It's more of a kind of a tongue in cheek, so a bit of a humorous idiom rather than the idiom that you'd hear all the time in natural conversation. Would you agree with that, Keith?
I would, yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. A little bit tongue in cheek. My computer is frozen, I'm afraid. So it's refusing to write. There's absolutely nothing I can do. Um, I've got so many windows open, so just bear with me a moment. But it's completely frozen. I was just typing up the meaning of that you have misunderstood something. Okay, we'll wait and see if the as that page unfreezes. Well, let's do another one. Any ideas here? Point, circle, moon. Any ideas, guys? What is this one all about?
I like this one. Very clever, I think.
Oh, look at this. Everybody got this so quickly. Once in a blue moon, once in a blue moon, once in a blue moon. Oh, come on. Too easy. Well done, everybody. You're absolutely right. Once in a blue moon. Good. We'll share
So
one last
Keith, what does
one.
it mean, once in a blue moon?
Oh, what does it mean? So, once in a blue moon means very rarely, not very often. So, I go to the gym once in a blue moon, maybe once a month. It's not very often. What do you do once in a blue moon, Eli?
Once in a blue moon, let me think. I cook lasagna once in a blue moon, or prepare
Ah,
lasagna. One of my
nice.
favorite foods, but usually not something that I prepare too often, just because it's quite a lot of work. But
Right.
once in a blue moon, I'll prepare lasagna.
Fantastic. Also, one of my favorite meals. Absolutely. Good.
Mm.
We'll do one
I think
more.
it's a real comfort food. Very easy. Yeah.
It is. It is. Yes. Guys, what's this one? Alarm plus nose. Coffee. Is it coffee or is it tea? Any ideas? Deepika says, we got to see both of you live together once in a blue moon. Nice one.
Oh, that's a very good example.
Amanda, I think it is coffee. So what is it? Bluebell says, don't have time to smell the coffee. Almost. I mean, you're on the right lines. It's not my cup of tea. Interesting. Mohammed says clock and note tea. Ismail, I think you're barking up the right tree. And Sukufe, I think, is almost there. Smell coffee, then after wake up. So the expression, let's see if anybody's got it exactly right. Yeah, Patisha. Wake up and smell the coffee. This is I'm just typing it out again. Smell the coffee. Again, this is used, it is used quite a bit, isn't it? Wake up and smell the coffee. I think for when we say to somebody to realize what's happening, sometimes people are not aware of what the real situation is. They're almost in a dream world. And we say, come on, this is the reality. Wake up and smell the coffee. That's my interpretation. Is that how you would see it, Eli?
Yeah. I don't think it's an idiom that I'd necessarily use regularly, but that's definitely my interpretation. It's stop your misguided thoughts about something and be realistic. See it for what it is. Well, wake up and smell the coffee.
Yeah, see it for what it is. I like that. So I will just share the screen. I've got my pages back on again. So I'll just go through. We've had 3 idioms. You're barking up the wrong tree, meaning you have misunderstood. Once in a blue moon, meaning very rarely. And wake up and smell the coffee, meaning be realistic. See things or see it for what it is. Nice. Excellent. Good. Okay. So we've had some fun idioms. We are going to move on because we've been looking at idioms. We've been looking at IELTS writing, but I think we're moving on to look at tips for managing time. Is that right, Eli?
Yes. We're going to look at 5 tips now for managing your time in the IELTS test, or in the IELTS writing test.
Okay.
So again, this was another thing that a lot of people complained about as their major challenge when it comes to IELTS writing is how to manage your time in the writing test. Because as you'll know, Keith, you have 1 hour and you have to do task 1, which is either an academic report or a letter. And then you also have to write an essay. So very intimidating to do the writing test and to finish within 1 hour. But you do need to finish both task 1 and task 2 in order to be getting those high scores.
Absolutely.
So I've got 5 tips I'd like to share with you guys today. And the first one is to read task 2 first, but start writing task 1 first. And the reason for that is if you read task 2 first, your mind begins to already think about ideas while you're writing task 1. So subconsciously, you're already coming up with the ideas that you're going to write in your essay before you've even had to start writing it. And that's a much better system than focusing, for example, on one task and then moving immediately on to the second task. So read task 2 first, but start writing task 1 first. What do you think about that one, Keith?
That is a bit of a mind blow. That is interesting. So just let's see if I've understood. What you're saying is you read the question, task 2, then you forget it and you start task 1. And what happens is your brain starts almost subconsciously processing task 2 question in the background getting ideas. This is happening. This is happening. But you do task one first. I think that's an absolute amazing thing, because personally, I've noticed when I try to focus on something, it's really hard to do. But
Mm.
for example, when I think about what I'm planning tomorrow, I look at what I'm going to do tomorrow. I then forget about it, go to bed and do something else. And when I'm doing something else, I start thinking about it, or should I say, ideas start coming to me, thoughts start coming to me. It's the mystery of
It's,
the subconscious, right?
it's something that I think we've talked about before as well, in terms of the way that we like to plan lessons. Is we often have an idea, Keith, you and I, of what our lesson is going to be, and
Yeah,
then we give ourselves about a week, because during that period of a week, ideas come to us on activities or quizzes or
yeah.
examples of what we'd like to include in those lessons. So when it actually comes to filming that lesson for YouTube or for Facebook, you've already built up a whole list of ideas of what you want to include
Yeah.
in that lesson.
Love it. Great.
Okay.
That's a great first tip. Nice.
So tip number 2 would be to experiment with different timings before you do your IELTS test. So you'll know you've got 1 hour to do task 1 and task 2. And the question paper recommends that you spend 20 minutes on task 1 and 40 minutes on task 2. But what I've actually found from speaking to a lot of people that do very well on the IELTS test is they don't stick to that timing. Certainly, if you're doing the academic IELTS test, people have found that they do better if they give themselves 25 minutes for task 1, 30 minutes for task 2, and then 5 minutes at the end just to kind of read over and check their writing. And that's certainly with the academic test, where you've got to write quite a lengthy report in task 1. And the idea is you want to experiment with these different timings in your preparation time, so
Mm,
you know what works best for you before you do your IELTS test.
right. So the key there, I mean, just to reiterate, is not just always to do 20 minutes and 40 minutes, but to be
Mm.
experimenting a little bit longer or a little bit less on each one to find out what works best for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what some people will do, which I think is a great idea, is they go onto the IELTS.org website, and they actually download and print off a copy of the IELTS writing test, so
Mhm.
the question paper, and then they practice writing in their answers on the real
Mm.
question sheet. And then that way, for example, they know what it feels like, and they know how many or what it looks like when they've written 150 words, 250 words, even 350 words. So they don't need to waste time doing things like counting words
Mm.
at the end of their essays to make sure that they've met the word count.
Brilliant. So doing some tests under exam conditions is a great idea.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the third tip I'd like to mention is to do or to consider doing the computer-based IELTS test. And the reason for that is nowadays a lot of people can type at a much faster rate than they can write by hand. I don't know, Keith, are you one of those people?
I'm laughing because I am not. I mean, as you can probably guess, as I'm typing on screen, um, I'm a bit of a digital immigrant. I didn't grow up with computers, so I much prefer writing by hand. I find it quicker and easier to express myself with handwriting. I find
Mhm.
typing a bit restrictive, and I'm slow and I make mistakes.
Right,
what?
so for you, I would definitely recommend do the handwritten test. Don't do the
Mm, mm,
computer-based test. But this is something to consider if, for example, you know that you can type at a much faster rate, and you also like the fact that you can quickly delete parts of the text and even move it around. If you're one of those people, then certainly consider doing the computer-based test.
Is the computer based test easier than the pen test?
No, it's exactly the same test.
Right,
Exactly the same test.
good.
Yeah,
Just to be clear.
just to be clear.
Good.
So, tip number 4 would be to get familiar with the common topics and question types. So we're not going to go into too much detail, but basically, especially in the IELTS essays, you've got 5 main question types. You've got agree, disagree questions. So a typical question would be something like our uniform example. Students should wear a school uniform. Do you agree or disagree? Or to what extent do you agree or disagree? So that's an agree, disagree question. And actually, most IELTS questions are agree, disagree questions. So you should spend a lot of your preparation time preparing for these agree, disagree questions. They are the most common.
Oh,
You also have
say that
advantage,
again.
disadvantage.
Say that again. That's really
Okay.
important.
Yeah. So out of all the question types that you get in task 2, so your IELTS essay, the most common are the agree, disagree questions. So they should take up the bulk of your preparation time practicing writing agree, disagree questions. And certainly in the course, I look at different strategies and different structures that you can use for answering an agree, disagree question. And that's also something that we'll touch on a little bit in Monday's live class that we do together.
Mhm.
So we've got the agree, disagree questions. We've also got advantage, disadvantage questions, which aren't as common as the agree, disagree questions, but still quite common. And often they'll ask you whether you think the advantages of something outweigh the disadvantages. You also have discussion questions where you have two sides of a debate and you have to talk about both of those sides and then to give your own opinion, also very common. Then you have double questions. Now, double questions are quite tricky because there's so many different shapes and forms that they can appear in. So you might be asked about the problems and solutions about something. So, for example, the problems and solutions for encouraging people to recycle or to buy electric cars. What stops people from buying electric cars? What can be done to solve these problems? So that would be an example of a double question.
What is a double question exactly? Why is it a double question?
It's basically it's when the question asks you for two things.
Mhm.
So in agree disagree questions or advantage disadvantage questions, you have your statement, and then below that you have one particular task that you're being asked to do, which is do you agree or disagree? In a double question, you're going to have two things that you need to do. So one would be identify the problems, and it's usually problems, so you have to mention more than one problem. And then it might say, and then recommend some solutions. So in this case, it's a double question because there are two parts to this question that you need to mention.
Right.
And
Okay.
again, these can come in various forms. So you might even have something like, um, if we're looking at school uniforms, you could say, why do some schools encourage students to wear school uniforms? And then that would be the first question. And then below that, it would say, do the advantages of school uniforms outweigh the disadvantages?
Right.
So again, it's a tricky one because ultimately you're having to write two parts to this question:
Yeah.
the causes for school uniforms and whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. And that's the kind of thing that examiners are going to be looking at to see, have you addressed both parts of these questions and have you addressed both parts of these questions fully?
Right.
So these double questions aren't so common, but they're certainly tricky.
That's very, very interesting. So I imagine the structure of your essay is very important, how you structure the different ideas there. And I guess that's something we're not looking at today, but something that we will touch on probably in next Monday's live lesson. And also, Eli, in your online course for IELTS writing, something that you cover, I know, in significant detail. But we'll talk more about that a bit later. Great.
Okay, and then we've just got the final question type, which are these direct questions, which are not very common at all, but they can sometimes throw students because they haven't seen them so much in their preparation. So an example might be something like, who should fund advances in healthcare, individuals, companies, or the government? So that's a direct question. You're being asked, who do you think should fund research into healthcare? And again, not so common, but it's good to have a strategy so that if you see that kind of question, in your question paper, you know exactly how you're going to tackle that question.
Right, good. So the key is
So
being prepared. The more you understand
being
the different
prepared,
types, the better prepared you are.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
great.
then also the other thing is to be comfortable with the main themes that appear in IELTS. So we've got things like the environment, buildings and transport, education, work, health and happiness. And certainly the environment out of all of those comes up very regularly. And Keith, you and I were discussing the other day that actually there's a huge overlap between the IELTS essays that you get in the writing test and part 3 of the speaking test. You often
Yeah.
see the same question appearing in both parts. So
Yes.
actually, by preparing yourself better for part 3, you're also preparing yourself for the critical ideas and critical thinking skills that IELTS essays require. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I totally agree. I mean, the language, of course, it's all English. Sometimes the spoken language is a bit different, but the ideas, if you're preparing ideas about schools and uniforms, then that will be good for your writing, but also good for IELTS Speaking Part 3, because IELTS Speaking Part 3 is developing your ideas, going deeper into a topic in that conversation. So the preparation, there's an overlap. Your ideas and generating ideas for IELTS Speaking Part 3 and for the writing, they help each other, which is great. It's good.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a motivating and enjoyable way to prepare for IELTS writing, just by getting
Right.
hold of some IELTS Part 3 questions, which I think you have on your website, and then discussing those questions with a student or with a partner or with your teacher or whoever you're preparing for IELTS with.
There is. I think if I'll have to share the link with everybody later, but last Saturday on YouTube, there was a video I did about IELTS Speaking Part 3. There is a link to the lesson on the website. And in that lesson, IELTS Speaking Part 3, there's a PDF with lots of topics and subtopics for IELTS Speaking Part 3. And it's a guide for speaking partners to practice those topics. But that it's the same. You can use it for writing as well to share ideas with your partners.
Yeah, certainly. And just by what I've seen over the years is people with much more vocabulary to do with these topics are able to write their essays much faster as well,
Yeah.
and actually come up with ideas much faster as well. So by learning vocabulary related to these topics, you're going to be really helping yourself do your best in the writing test.
It's all
Not only in terms of the criteria, but also for coming up with ideas
yeah.
as well.
It's all in the preparation. I mean, I love your tip number 4 here. Get familiar with the common topics and question types. I would emphasize to people, don't try and memorize answers, right? When you go to like procon.com, don't just memorize the answer and copy it out. It's about getting familiar with the topic and then building up the ideas and the language you need, right?
Yeah, I spoke to one student that had a kind of interesting study method that I really liked. What she did is she took these model essays, so the model essays that I have on my website, and she was just reading one before she went to bed every night, and just
Mm.
thinking about it. And it's kind of a relaxing way to study, and you're doing it, before you go to sleep. It doesn't really require much action because you're simply reading and developing your ideas on that particular topic. But done over a period of time, it can be extremely effective.
So reading an IELTS model answer before you go to bed, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In the same way that someone might be able to look at the Procon website,
Yeah.
procon.org website that we looked at earlier in this lesson, and just kind of developing their own ideas on those particular topics and engaging with the ideas mentioned in the website.
Yeah, fantastic. I can see students thinking, well, that'll send me to sleep if I'm struggling sleeping.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
be
sure they'll
asleep
have the
by line
best night's
4.
sleep they've ever had.
Brilliant. So I love that
Yeah.
tip number 4. We have one more tip, I think.
The final tip is to know which essay structure you're going to use. And I think that's going to be a bit of a precursor for the next lesson that we're going to do, where we look at how to write a high level essay, because certainly having a good idea of what structure you're going to use in your essay is going to help you to get straight down to it. You'll know how many ideas you need to mention. You'll have familiarity with writing those essays before, and you're going to know exactly what to include in each body paragraph and the introduction and conclusion as well. So that'll help you to save time.
So you talk about essay structure. Where can students find out about different essay structures?
So that's certainly something that is covered in detail in the writing course on your platform. So they'll have access to that on Wednesday, and it's going to be something that we touch on in Monday's lesson as well.
Right. Fantastic. Great. So great. We've been through 5 tips all about managing time, which is great. Thank you for those. Those are really, really nice. We've got some feedback from, we've got Rohit says, thank you. The lesson is fabulous. That's so kind. Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you, Rohit.
And Maria as well. Lovely. Nice. And it's nice, KDI, to see that, the motivation to develop more ideas. I'm very pleased that it is motivating you. That's why we are here.
That's
brilliant.
Wonderful.
Yes. Now, John says, I think if you cover the courses in live mode, it would be better guidelines. Yeah, I mean, so John, what we are doing today is Eli and myself are doing this live lesson to introduce some tips and ideas about IELTS writing. Next Monday, we will do another live lesson with even more ideas for you. And then, in fact, on Monday, let me just show you that. I'll put that up. It'll come on Monday, the 28th at 4 p.m. Spain time, because I'm based in Spain. We'll do another live lesson similar to today. We'll be looking at writing a high-scoring essay and how you do that. So we'll be digging a little bit deeper into that topic. And then, well, maybe, I don't know, Eli, do you want to say something about any more about Monday's topic?
Well, exactly that. We're going to be, ideally, we're going to be writing a high-scoring IELTS essay together. And in the same way that we did the brainstorming technique or the multiple perspectives technique today, we're going to be going through that process with everybody watching as well. So it's going to be interactive.
Fantastic. So that's next Monday, right? And then next Wednesday, which is the 2nd of March, we'll be officially launching Eli's writing course on the Keith Speaking Academy. So this is the collaboration, right? So that when you come into Keith Speaking Academy, if you've bought my courses from Wednesday, you'll be able to see Eli's course, similar price, and you'll be able to buy that. Great value for money. It's a fantastic course. I've been through it. We've kind of collaborated a bit on it. The teaching is 100% Eli, but we wanted to put everything together so it's easier for students to study speaking and writing together. So on next Wednesday, stick around on Wednesday, because that's when we'll be doing discounts, special offer for the first, I don't know how many people, or the first few days. It will be cheaper. There'll be special offers going on. So do join us on Wednesday. We'll do a kind of another live session to tell you more about it and show you a bit more detail about the course. So next Wednesday, it'll be like a launch party, telling you all about it. And we'll answer all your questions, right?
Exactly right. Also, before we end, I'd just like to remind people there is a PDF of what we've covered in this lesson, and there will also be a PDF of Monday's lesson that we'll put out on Monday. So if there's something that you missed from this lesson, or you'd like to just go over it in a bit more detail, then certainly download that PDF.
Yeah, so I will, this video gets recorded on YouTube and Facebook. As soon as we finish, we'll put the link to the PDF in the video notes, so you can see that, you can click on it, you can go to the page and download the PDF there. That's it. Great. Good. We're kind of coming to the end. I mean, I'll give you a very, very quick recap of what we've seen today. It's been a very interesting lesson. I hope it's been useful for you. But today we've been looking at IELTS Writing, our first lesson. The next lesson is next Monday, 4 p.m. But today we've had a look at generating ideas in the exam and how you can do that and some tips for that. We've also looked at study habits. What are the good study habits you need? Make sure you're using the right techniques to get ready. We've had a bit of fun with idioms, and we've been looking at managing your time, especially when you're writing, right? It's so important. So we've had 5 really nice tips about managing your time. And the PDF, as Eli said, I will share the link with you. There is a PDF you can go and download to get today's tips. And we will do exactly the same next Monday when we come together and we have our second live lesson, which is all about writing a high-scoring essay. That's next Monday at 4 p.m. Spain time or Central European time. Got a few comments from people. Kelly says, I want to say a huge thank you. 7.5. Hooray. Well done to you. That was in your speaking. Nice. Very, very nice. Brilliant. I'm just having a look. Any other else? Domenico says, I got excellent feedback on my last essay. Great. Some of you may already be studying with Eli, and I know he may have already given you some ideas there. Angelica says, thanks for being thoughtful and generous, introducing other teachers to your community. Well, absolutely, yes. The more value we can offer to the students, the better, right? Brilliant, good. Amazing tips, says Tran. Brilliant. So listen, I hope all of this has been helpful. Both Eli and myself, well, I've enjoyed it. I'm sure Eli, have you enjoyed it?
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Keith. I really appreciate it. It's been
Great.
great fun coming here and meeting your community.
Fantastic. I'm sure they're delighted to meet you and find out about you. As we mentioned, you can check out Eli's YouTube channel. Just look for English Pro Tips. May the moderators, Paula, Apsara, and Mehdi, if you could share the link in the link in the chat boxes to the YouTube channel, that would be great. Go and check out his work. Come and join us on Monday for our next live lesson, and do join us next Wednesday, 2nd of March, when we'll be doing a short live to launch Eli's course. It's IELTS Writing. It'll be on the Keith Speaking Academy. Everything in one place for all of you. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Eli, thank you so much. Great to see you, and we'll stay in touch, obviously.
Right. Thank you for having me.
No pleasure. No, it's fine. My pleasure. Great. All of you guys for joining us today. Thank you very much for coming. Do remember, you can also check out the Keith Speaking Academy for more ideas and tips. If you're on YouTube, do subscribe and press that little notification button. And look forward to seeing you next Monday for our next session. We'll be on both YouTube and Facebook, and we'll see you then. Take care, my friends, and we'll leave with a bit of music.